This is the compressed charcoal. I just want to use a bottle is the best, a strong bottle, and just roll it back and forth, and then it crushes into a powder. This was a really easy charcoal to crush. Sometimes it's not this easy, but you got to work with what you have and make sure it's compressed. In the distance you can see a little twig back there. That's the other charcoal, which is the wrong one. So then take your powder, put it on your paper. So I crush mine in a little paper towel. And then begin to rub. Stop recording just so you can hear the back and forth. It's going to take a few tries. It doesn't happen right away. I'm going to run out of charcoal, so I'm going to have to recrush some more. The other half of my compressed charcoal crayon, and then I'll put another layer on top just to get it dark enough so it's much easier to see the contrast and create some nice darks and some nice lights. It's kind of messy. You just have to keep at it and kind of don't put too much pressure. Just kind of rub it like you're drawing with the particles and your towel. Doesn't take that long. This is real time, so it's almost done. It's nice to go all the way to the outer edges, but you don't have to. Here we are in the final stage, and it's pretty much the last rubbing. There's hardly any crayon left, but I'll save some of the dust to use later. You'll see me drawing with my finger, and I just save a little pile of powder to then use my finger, dip into the powder with my finger, and then draw darker areas with my finger. So my finger becomes kind of the tool. Okay, now we're going to begin drawing. I'm going to try to just do the cloth in the background. And I have my kneaded eraser, which is necessary. It's the gray one that you can kind of stretch. I'll show you. It'll show me stretching it. And when you stretch it, it absorbs the dirty charcoal, and then you can start with a fresh eraser. So I'm just taking out big shapes. You can see I didn't draw beforehand. I didn't do a line drawing or anything. That can be confusing. So I just immediately start looking at shapes of light. So in this case, the edge, the left edge is a long sort of cylinder of white. And so I take out the whole thing immediately, and I just start moving across from left to right. And each time I encounter a new shape, which might be a dark shadow, I sort of skip over the dark shadow and then just find the next area of light, which can look like a line, because the drapery has these kinds of folds, so it's sort of easy to say, like, there's sort of a triangle made up of two light areas of folds, and then so you can, in the middle, in between those two is a shadow area. So you can see I'm using the eraser just sort of like a drawing tool. Just instead of adding shading, I'm taking it away. And then I'll go with my finger, sort of like smudging. I'm pointing at some of the area where I'm looking at some of the detail, but you can't really see it. But so your finger is kind of like a way to create the gradation, between light and dark, and soften transitions or create different values. And the charcoal should erase fairly easy. You don't have to struggle at it. But that's the compressed charcoal works a lot better than the vine. And vine won't work at all, really. So I'm just going to move across. It can be confusing if you've never done it, but because you get lost in some of the shapes. But you just sort of go from one side to the other, and you can see areas where you want to erase and areas where you don't. You make mistakes, but then you just take some charcoal on your finger and then kind of push the details, in the direction you want them to go. So I'm on the bottom of the cloth, you can't really see it, but you can see it's like drawing with a pencil. You use the eraser like a regular drawing tool, but you're just drawing with white in a sense. Use your finger, soften up stuff. You'll always see new things, so you keep adding detail wherever you see it. It's a light and dark problem. The light's coming from one direction, you have shadows right on the opposite side of the light, and you just try to go between the two until you can see the cloth starting to come into shape. Move across, see another area of light, which forms kind of a line, so I'll make a mark, and then I'll go up to somewhere else maybe that'll help me connect the two sides, so I'm not just have a line floating out there. I'll be like, okay, this detail, which is another strong area of light, will then connect to that line if I've done it right. And see, I haven't had to really stretch my eraser much. It just stays pretty fresh. It's a larger one, and the charcoal comes off pretty easy. Sometimes I squeeze it, that way I just kind of change the shape of it. You can shape the eraser into any shape you want, so it can be pointed, it can be long and narrow, it can do different things so that you can make the shape that will help you with the detail. If you want it to be flat and broad, in a sense, you can take out large areas easy, or if you want it to take out a line, then you can squeeze it so it makes a sharper edge, and then make a sharp line. It's an evolution. If you get, impatient with it, you'll just think it'll never happen, but you have to wait until you start to see how all the shapes come together. And take some time and take some practice, but it's really just in some ways easier to draw, because you can make mistakes, and then instead of erasing, you're just covering up with more charcoal, and then you can go back in and then use the eraser to bring back a certain detail. But so I'm at the other side now, and you can see there's this sort of zigzagging fold, and so it's going to look kind of clumsy at first, but I just need some direction, so I'm going to put what I think is the detail, make sure it's lining up with other things, and then start to find another light area, because the lights help you bring the cloth out of the darkness. So there's still a lot of subtle shadow stuff that's going to come, and if I had more time with it, in the end it would come out, maybe better, but this would be, a warm-up drawing or something, just to get back into the practice, and then you would I might apply the charcoal a little differently so that some areas erase better, because I had some trouble with some of the lighter lights I couldn't get. But that's normally the case. It's not a perfect process all the time, but you go with what you can get, You can see I'm grabbing charcoal with my finger from the outside of the drawing, so there's a lot of darkness around, so I can just grab some of that with my finger and then add in some, more some darker values. But then I realized, I need even more darkness, so I'm gonna crush some charcoal in a second and then use that, or actually I just got some of the old powder that was left over from my rubbing the paper, and I put it on a napkin, and then I use that to help me add some deeper values. on this napkin you're going to see is, well, you'll see some charcoal powder in there. And so then I just dip my finger in it, and then I can add some deeper, darker shadows, which helps, you know, see detail better. It's like focusing. You'll be surprised how good your finger is as a tool if you just trust it, and you have to, you know, accept if it's not exactly the detail you wanted, but it's you put it in the right place, and then you can take your eraser and then kind of, you know, perfect it or sharpen it or whatever. And I'm just right now want to increase the contrast level, so I'm going to add some key areas where I see some strong darks, which is going to help my lights look lighter. It's going to help my grays, middle values look more like they're in the middle. And then the three-dimensional aspect will be a lot easier to see, and then it'll help me see other details. You know, more details lead to other details, and then different values lead to seeing more, you know, values or ranges of values. So the more you add, the more you see, and the more range you have in terms of you know, light and dark, and then the actual thing looking like it's three-dimensional. But you can see these are big areas of light, and so you just easily erase a big shape of light. You know, careful not to, you know, erase your shadows. Just avoid, you know, areas where you want to maintain a sense of shadow, and then start to. What I'm doing now is crushing the eraser into a kind of a sharp edge, and so I can make some. There's a sharp edge on the cloth there. I can't really see it in this, but I try to get that edge. So those kind of details are really impressive when you see a really sharp line or fold or something that tends to make it look more realistic. So I keep going back to the highlight because I want it to really pop, but it just doesn't really get whiter, but it's pretty white enough. And I'm trying to get that detail again, so you can see some of the dark. I put some nice dark on the edge, so it's like you can see it on the cloth. It's that wave things that's waving in the wind. That fold or flap that's waving, and then there's a nice sharp shadow right underneath it, but kind of never really got it. But you can use this. Sometimes you can just take a pencil or a charcoal pencil or crayon and like put it in by hand, but I didn't get that far. You can see I drew the whole thing from one side to the other pretty much. Now I'm just already on the details, you know, trying to create some nice little details. Because I'm pretty confident I kind of got the right, you know, layout. And I'm going to go back still and add some more stuff when I see like, oh, actually there's something, you know, missing. You know, some of the shadows missing, some of the reflected light is missing. So I'll go back in and add some stuff that I've kind of missed. Not sure to keep fussing at that highlight, but I'm kind of just thinking as I draw, so I'm like going back and then seeing new things and wondering, like, wonder if this will be, you know, helpful or not or whatever. And still kind of a lot of detail to add, but I'm going to go to the fold that's in the middle, and that's going to show me new things that I maybe have missed. Or This is one of the larger pocket folds that you can't really see in this, but there's at the end you'll see maybe a better part of the cloth is it's pinned in two points, and then part of the cloth is makes a pouch, and so there's the front of the pouch and the back of the pouch, and that's what I'm fussing with a little bit. And then that dark little patch I just put is where you see the crease up right at the top of the cloth where you can before it goes out of frame. Some of this might look a little bit different because of the angle of the camera. I can't really see some of the folds look like they're a little bit, foreshortened or like close, but I think it's because of the angle is pretty sharp. And it also might be a little bit off. I didn't, spend a ton of time making sure everything was right. I just wanted to show the process a little bit and how the eraser works. And you can hear the rubbing and all that, and when the finger rubs and stuff. That's all. Part of the process is just like constantly drawing, constantly moving your hand, constantly fixing, making large strokes that are directional. So you lead yourself, or you lead the drawing in a direction. You make proportional decisions and placement decisions with the different strokes and lines, and so in a way, right, shouldn't hesitate too much, and you're just trying to add, and then if you make a mistake, just take it away by adding some more charcoal and fixing it by covering it, or trimming it by adding a darker outline or background. Sorry, my arm's blocking a little bit, but every time I put my hand to the side, I'm grabbing some charcoal from the powder and trying to add in, and then I can go back and lighten it. But I'm drawing with black shapes as well as white shapes in a way, so it's not really a line drawing, it's more of a shape drawing. And I'm picking with the eraser like that, I'm seeing little creases and things that I think are interesting, and maybe I'm wondering if I can get them, so I pick at them like they're little edges I'm trying to chip away at. Grab some charcoal, draw with my finger. If you don't get a lot of the medium, so middle gray shadows that aren't quite black, they're kind of like grayish white, those are important to find, because they create the real sense of near and far and middle range. Or if you just have two values like white and black, it'll just look like a skeleton, or won't have any sense of roundness or differing light effects on the cloth. So you have to kind of look closely and keep adding and subtracting and adding and subtracting, and making sure you catch a lot of the important values and value range. The finger's really important. You gotta use your finger a lot. You gotta use the eraser like sort of like a shading tool. You move it back and forth. Sometimes you can pick at certain things. Other times just, kind of draw with it. Try not to think of it as like a traditional eraser. Think of it more of it as a tool or like a paintbrush in a way. See, I've missed some stuff. Maybe I'm not sure. We'll see in the end. I just see some stuff. I probably would have corrected if I paid more critical attention. I just wanted to get the quick sense of like creating a cloth, Mm. I think the main thing, work across just from one side to the other. And I don't have to draw out the thing first, just kind of work from, one side to the next, adding as you go. Try to see the whole drawing as a whole too, so you can proportion it correctly, meaning, compare all the parts in a way while you're looking at it and say it's like, get a sense of the overall height to width of it in a very quick way, and then when you draw you can just kind of lean back and say like, yeah, mine's about the same height width relationship, and then all the parts will kind of take care of themselves as long as you start with maybe the correct length of something, and then everything else should compare to that in a way. At this stage, I'm like seeing a lot of the stuff that I maybe passed by at first, and so I'm going back to light and then create this very light shadow in that panel instead of such a dark shadow. And then I'll go across and try to do the same with everything else. But if I was trying to make it much more realistic, I'd just maybe be a lot more careful, but I was, speeding up the process a bit because it's already gonna be a long drawing for you to pay attention to. But you can go really slow and delicately, or kind of move more quickly like I'm doing. But See how you can add darkness with your finger just to get those folds sort of, they're casting little shadows, and it's important to make them feel like they're three-dimensional, but towards the end you'll see me try to get the right edge revealed by adding the cast shadow, and so I'll lighten the wall a little bit, just real shorthand way to reveal that dark edge of the cloth without having to, sort of draw it or outline it. If I outline it, that's not what the light's doing, so I have to use the wall in a way to finish off the drawing. I don't know if I'm doing it here maybe, but just to start to see if it'll help me see the edge better, and then I'm just sort of like erasing around and leaving the shadow on the wall. So just looking at the shape and kind of getting a general idea, maybe not perfect, but you can see there now there's a cast shadow now on the wall a little bit, and so I'm erasing the light area. Didn't outline it first, just go in, doesn't have to be perfect, but and I'll add a little bit of I gotta lighten that cloth a little bit because it's not exactly as dark as the cast shadow. Lighten a little more so you can see the cast shadow. Now you can see it sort of sit off the wall. I should finish the other side on the left side, but I don't know if I did. That's about it. Just kind of a quick sketch of the cloth.